Scully, how come I wouldn't know about him?
I'm amazed you don't know him.
So am
Tremaine
I.
Williams, very, very talented. Very talented.
So am I.
Like
Every time I
gifted.
think of talented guys that are relatively obscure, except for boxing guys who was known, the name that always comes to mind on how he was the real legend out of there was Bernard Mays. Every time I
Bernard
think of
Mays,
something,
right.
I think of Bernard Mays.
Yeah.
Out of Kronk.
Well, Tremaine was a Bernard Mays of our area, but he did pretty well as a pro. He did okay, and as an amateur, he did great, but not as much as his talent should have brought him. Like he
Wow.
was good. He was really good.
Wow.
Wonder
Yeah,
how
Yes.
Shakur Stevenson, he must be pretty privy to pull such a deep cut. I mean, that's crazy.
yeah.
No pun intended on the cut part. Yeah, that's good. Listen, I gotta say the analogy that I used was, you could take Roy, Ali. I guess you could throw Floyd into the mix there. You know, outstanding talent who got away with maybe breaking every rule in the book, and still had success beyond imagination. And three molds, or certainly at least two with Roy and Ali, that were broken, and nobody can ever replicate what these guys ever did, right? Like they can't do that. But if you were to put pictures into a book of the sweet science, how to box, doing it the right way, there is nothing this Shakur Stevenson does wrong. He is textbook perfect on everything he does, from defense to footwork to hands up to discipline to staying focused in the ring to not getting hit. I mean, there is every punch he throws, technique wise, everything is picture book perfect. And sometimes I was saying this the other day. I was sat in the corner, and at times, and this doesn't happen to me often. I'm making an admission here. This doesn't happen often. I'm sitting there like in awe, watching this guy do this right in front of my eyes. Very rare that happens. Okay, like I'm in
Yeah.
awe watching him do that, and I realize, oh, I'm working. I got to get my Vaseline ready. I got to get my stuff ready. I'm just sitting there enthralled and saying, "This is perfect." Like, how are you doing this? This is not against. You're not doing this against a scrub. You're not doing this against an overmatched opponent. You're doing it against the elite of the world and making it look ridiculously simple. I still don't know how it's done. I've been in this game, 45 plus years, and I still don't know how he does what he does. But man, he is gifted. He's as perfect as I've ever seen in a boxing ring. That's saying a lot.
Mm.
Go ahead, argue
Also,
with me. Tell me the
well,
contrary.
no,
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 no.
I mean,
You can.
I'll argue with you on something else. I'll tell you this. I would have loved. Now, here's the deal. He has the knock on him. People say, well, he is he is close. One of the closest things to perfect. There's no perfect, but he's very, very close to it. I mean, I didn't see one mistake in the whole fight. It was almost like he made it look like Tio was fighting in slow motion. That fight would have really been amped up if he finished the show. But somebody, there's a couple people, but one of those somebodies is here, had said, like, hey, no need to finish the show. That guy's going to come out trying to kill you. Like, keep going with the game plan. It's a smart move, but not the exciting move. That's the only knock I'll put, is I would have loved to have seen him finish him in those last
You heard
rounds.
me say that?
Yeah, everybody in the world heard you say that.
Yeah, well, I don't know what they heard and what they don't hear. Sometimes I say stuff that I don't know if it ever gets caught or not. But yeah,
It did,
yeah.
yeah. No, you said I'm going to misquote you. You'll know it better than me. But it was something like, "Hey, he's looking to knock you out. Like, don't take that chance."
Yeah, I think I said he's going to come out and try and kill you.
Yes, that was.
Yeah.
Yep, that's it, verbatim.
Yeah. So yeah. Listen, he's. There's no doubt he could be a guy who could become more of a risk taker. From a fan's perspective, but from a trainer's perspective, from a coach's perspective, Scully, I don't know if you disagree, but you're watching this this conductor, this maestro, just doing what he wants in the ring and making it look easy.
Right.
Both of you guys, I don't know about you, Jess, but I know Scully knows about hockey.
Yeah.
Scully and I have been to games at the Garden. We went to a game at Madison Square Garden together, actually. The reason I bring that up is because I remember back in the day they used to say, and I mean I can see how this could be true. I don't know what the experience is, but they used to say that Gretzky used to see things in slow motion. Wayne Gretzky would see things slower than everyone else is seeing them, like they happen at a slower rate. Whether that's true or not, it certainly could apply here to Shakur and how he see the. I mean, it must look to him like fighters are throwing punches, while they're in a barrel of molasses. You know what I mean? Like that's how slow he sees everything coming because it seems like he makes them miss like so easily, effortlessly, and then you wonder after watching him fight how does this other guy, whoever it may be, get hit with those shots? He gets hit with everything but the kitchen sink, right? And you wonder how is that possible? I'm still amazed. Like me, I'm still watching. Remember watching Roy, thinking this is incredible. Like there's just no way you can't win. Like there's just no
Well,
way, and that's how
you
I
know
feel
what?
watching.
I'll say this because I will be. I'm going to be totally honest. I watch his fights. What he's doing is very impressive. It's boring to watch for me. I'm just being honest. But I will say this. Let me. I'll finish my point and I'll let you guys go. It's boring for me to watch. I like an exciting fighter. I love the exciting fighters. I loved Carmen Basilio. I loved Duran. I love fighters who bring the action. I love Terrence Crawford because he wants to hurt his opponent. Now that being said, I don't think that's a knock on Shakur. If he's that good and Tio couldn't even touch him, that's not a knock on him. It just means it's going to be really exciting when there's someone who is going to be good enough to beat him. And I don't think there's anyone around. So either someone's coming up or he has to go up and wait. But when the day comes that he meets his match and gets in a real toe-to-toe fight, I can't even imagine what that's going to look like. So I will say I am bored by his fights, but I don't blame him. He's just that good. Would you tell Tim Duncan to play like Shaq? No, Tim Duncan's great as Tim Duncan, but it's just not as thrilling.
I'll
That's my
defer
two
to
cents on it.
Scully. I'll leave to Scully for the first remark. Then
Well, whenever there's a situation like this, I always remember this. I used to train a kid named Matt Godfrey. As a cruiserweight, he was highly ranked. He was like number 2 in the world, I think, at the time. And for a cruiserweight, he was elusive. He could box. He was a good cruiserweight boxer, right? And we fought a kid named Sean Hawk, who at the time was like 18-0 with like 17 knockouts or something. And I'm watching him, and the kid was, obviously strong and whatever. So I said, okay, look, we're fighting in Philadelphia. We're on ESPN. Teddy Atlas was ringside, and we boxed, and we weren't getting touched. Like we were winning the fight clearly. And Teddy criticized me as the coach because because he put the mic on me between rounds, and I said, hey man, we're boxing. We gotta be careful. This kid can punch, blah blah blah. So Teddy was basically saying in the last couple rounds, he was saying, they're way ahead. It's time for him to go for the knockout. And I said, look, that would be cool if we got the knockout. However, if that happened, and then I told him in the last 2 rounds when we're ahead 8-0, right? And I tell him, all right, let's close the show, man. Let's bang him out of there. And then he turns around, gets clipped, and gets knocked out. I get fired, and I'm the laughing stock of coaches. Everybody will remember. They won't even blame Matt. They'll blame me, and they'll go, if he got bad advice from the corner. He should have done. Why wouldn't you just do what you were doing? You were winning easy, and that was what I basically said in the interviews after the fight, not knowing that that's what Teddy had said about my corner work. So I was surprised that Teddy, would say that. I thought he would know better. You're winning the fight easy, but we boxed in the beginning for a reason because this guy's a good puncher. He's strong. I'm sure if Shakur felt like fighters know when it can happen, right? They hit the gas because they know. Well, he obviously didn't hit the gas. Like, he didn't feel, because if he could have got him out of there, he would have. Every fighter wants to knock people out. They would love to knock people out if they could, But he realized, I think, if I'm going to stop this kid, I'm really going to have to push it. And if I do, I'm going to open myself up to something that I'm not opening myself up to now, and I'm winning easily. So why don't I just keep doing that?
Yeah, I can relate exactly to what Scully's saying. And Jesse, if your name was Bobby, we'd now be calling you Bloodthirsty Bobby, but it's not. It's Jesse, so I don't have a bloodthirsty equation to go with it. But let's use Shakur as a prime example for exactly what you just said. Okay, let's take a look at the last 3 fights he had. So he fought that kid on last minute's notice, that British kid, who he knocked out, who he stopped. But it was such a one-sided fight. But he went for the knockout. He went to get him out of there, and he got him out of there. But it wasn't competitive at all. So to me, I'm watching this. I'm feeling bad for the other kid because like he's just jumped into 10 feet of water and can barely swim. You know what I mean? Like this guy's drowning. He's doing his best to survive. Right? Showed a lot of heart and whatnot, but it wasn't on the same level of what Shakur was. Shakur wins by knockout, but you don't really get any sense of how great that was. Now, the Zepeda fight, at Arthur Ashe Stadium, that was really, a beautiful stadium, great place for a fight, the way it's built and everything. That was a super exciting fight. He's on the ropes, and this was throwback to my hero, Wilfred Benitez, back in the day, where he would beat you up when he has you pinned, when you had him pinned on the ropes, and he'd beat the heck out of you. When he has you pinned, when you have him pinned. And Zepeda's got him on the ropes, and Zepeda's the one getting hit every time he throws a shot. And I'm watching this thinking, this is great. It went to a decision. I thought it was exciting. It wasn't boring. Not 1 second of that fight was boring. And then there's this one where you as a fan wants to see more. And me, when I watch a guy like Richard Hall or Arturo or any of these guys taking the punches that they throw as a coach, it's cringe for me. Like it hurts me to watch this, and the coach is letting the guys take this kind of punishment, and then they come back to the corner and they say, "You got him. You're doing good." And the guy says, "Well, someone's hitting me in there. I don't know who it is, but someone's beating the shit out of me." Right? So, I cringe when I see fighters getting hurt and getting hit. So watching an artist like Shakur is anything but boring to me. The only thing I will say, whether it's Shakur or anybody else, Teofimo was a world-class, dangerous guy, and Shakur delivered. Now, when you have a guy like Shakur, for example, who's fighting a guy who really isn't part of that league, like if I go back to the British kid, I forget his name, who fought him, 3 fights ago. If I go back to him, and you could see that you could take a guy out, like he's not even winning a minute of a round, let alone a round. He's not winning a minute of a round. You can get him out of there because he doesn't belong in the same league. Then yes, he should go. But I certainly would not put Teo in that category. And I think watching that artistry to me was beautiful. Like Scully, when have you seen something like a dismantling like that? When have you seen something like that in recent time?
Yeah, nah, not since Roy.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
like Roy used to do that
Yeah,
to people.
even
And
Floyd, you can't even say Floyd did. Now Floyd was even, Cotto and him were 4-4 in their fight. It wasn't he won, but it wasn't a dismantling like this.
I mean, I was at the point where around the 9th round, I was telling my guy, like I was with, I was like, "Listen, man, if you want to go, we can go. We could just beat the crowd,
Get to TikTok diner early."
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the other side of that, this has already been discussed a lot, but I'd love to get your guys' thoughts on it. Teofimo, do you think that he came with not his best for that fight, or do you think Shakur really was just that good?
Me or you, Scully? You want to take it first?
Yeah,
or?
Shakur is that good, because the thing is, like, he made him look bad, right? He looked bad, okay? That doesn't mean that Teofimo's still not a good fighter. It's just like I always use Roy as an example. Like Roy beat guys, and people go, "Oh, that guy sucked." I go, "No, that guy doesn't suck. That guy's good. He's really good." You look at who the guy beat, who the other guy beat. You'd be like, "Man, Roy made this guy look like he never even fought before." And that's what happened the other night. Teofimo is a good boxer. He's really good, and he'll come back and he'll beat other guys, and you'll go, "Oh, it was just a bad night." But no, it's a bad night because the guy you're fighting is a magician.
Yeah,
It's just that kind of thing.
I'm sorry, Russell,
look, been really a fan of Shakur, to be honest with you, but I'm not stupid and I'm not blind, right? Like, he's good. He's really good.
It's like I get that, and it just doesn't only happen in boxing. And I don't know if in other sports that you guys follow, if the same thing happens. But if the Montreal Canadiens lose a hockey game up here, the Boston or New York, whoever's in town beats them, they don't say, "Oh my gosh, Boston played so well. They were so good. Their power play was working great. Their end-to-end rushes were fantastic." They never say that. They just say, "Oh, how bad the Canadians played. Oh, the Canadians played bad. They played bad." Well, did it ever occur to you that the other team played very, very good? So
boxing's a weird sport though, because especially nowadays, you only get so many shots, and specifically, you only get so many shots against other top guys. So, like in hockey, the Canadians, if they suck one night, they can come back and play great the next night. They could bounce right back in 2 days, or next week they could play the same team and get them back. But in boxing, it's like it just lingers for so long after you lose a fight, and it just leaves so much time for questions to be asked. I agree with you though, Scully. I feel bad almost asking that question. How often do you see in boxing that a guy gets credit? Rarely do you see a guy get full credit for a win, any win. I've noticed, like every win, there's a reason why the guy won. That wasn't him being really good. It's like I hear people going back and saying that like Tyson Fury's wins against Wilder aren't that good because look at Wilder now, or they'll say like Crawford's win against Canelo wasn't good because Canelo's older now. It's just always something, no matter how good the win is, that it gets taken away. So I do feel bad asking it, but I just felt like Teofimo was. I mean, he had some great fights too. We saw what he did with Lomachenko. He went toe to toe, and I don't know if I would say he won it. I mean, on paper he won it, So it's like to see him lose that bad. It was kind of an awakening, I would say.
And I don't think it can only be Teofimo's fault. I think Shakur played a massive role in that.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. You mentioned something earlier about Crawford saying, he'll go for it. I think if Shakur didn't have the hand issues that he had, and if he had Crawford's punching power, because Crawford can crack, he might not be Arthur Beterbiev, but he can crack. Okay, so he can roll the dice and say, okay, let's go. Boom, he hits you, he's going to hurt you. There's a good chance that Shakur hurts his hand before he hurts you, and he doesn't want to do that. So I think if Shakur had the power that Stevenson had, I think he'd go. That Crawford had, I think he would go for. Go for it a little bit more, as you like to put it. Roll the dice on this. Yeah, let's go. Because for sure we know he can hit you. And he's not getting hit, so we know he can hit you. But I think if he had the power, I think he would go for it more often. But I think he's very focused, stays in his lane, does what he does best, doesn't stray from that, doesn't try to be something he's not. And right now, to me, it's perfection. But
Yeah.
So, fun one. We'll take this one back. I've been reading Angelo Dundee's, rereading his autobiography, My View from the Corner.
Which one?
My View from the Corner.
Have you read I Only Talk Winning?
No, I didn't even know he had another book.
He had two.
Is it also an autobiography?
Yes, it is.
Really?
Great.
This one was written as an auto, like first person. That one is too?
I'm pretty sure.
Someone's
Maybe not, but it was.
What's going on?
But it was. I Only Talk Winning. So I'm sure it was. If the title is in the first person, I'm pretty sure the rest of the book is in first person. But I Only Talk Winning. Yeah.
So in rereading it and also going back and watching the fights, I rewatched Leonard Duran 1, Leonard Duran 2. Okay, now, I think that's a really cool case study. One in fighters fighting two completely different fights from one to the other and seeing the difference. But also, I have a theory, and everyone's got a different theory on this. In that second fight, I really do think, I believe in my heart of hearts that Duran quit because he had stomach issues. I swear to God, I think that's what it was. And the reason why is because in the round before he stops fighting and gives up, he's completely stagnant. He's not moving at all. He's given up on movement. He's not charging. He becomes very stagnant. And that's when Ray Leonard gets more confident and starts loading up. And then by the next round, that's when he starts boloing his punches. I just don't understand how Roberto Duran, in I think that was the 6th round, so 6 rounds into a fight, just all of a sudden stops. And before that, it didn't look to me like he was getting dressed down. He was relatively competitive, not enough to quit.
Yeah.
So I honestly believe that the rumor that went around, or what he had said, and I think Gil Clancy might have said it as well, that he had stomach issues. I think that's what it was. I believe that, but I'll open it up to you guys and to get your thoughts.
Let me take this one first, Scully. You got the first one on the last one. Let me take
Yep.
this one. I'll tell you why that fight happened and why it transpired the way it did. Everybody on the inside, when you come off, and Scully can speak on this, I'm sure. When you come off such a massive high, an adrenaline rush that cannot be compared to anything that Duran came off of in June in Montreal, 1980. This guy was conquered the world. He did the impossible by beating a welterweight king like Sugar Ray Leonard and took it right to him, and he invested every part of his body, heart, and soul into that fight and won. Now, this guy was so high, he was on such an emotional high, all he wanted to do was enjoy that high. It's like a drug he just couldn't get enough of. And so he ate himself up to 200 pounds. And Dundee, who I consider not trainer, but the greatest corner man in the history of the sport, in what he could do in a corner and a great boxing mind, they knew that Duran was up at 200 pounds and had to come down to make welterweight. On the other hand, Ray, he's on, as soon as he leaves that ring, he wants a rematch. Like now his adrenaline is on the other end. All he can focus on is getting him back. So he gets back into training, focused on Duran. Duran is focused on being the king of New York, partying as much as he could, doing everything wrong, I imagine, whatever he could do, to enjoy it. Training was the last thing on his mind. And less than 5 months later, they're back in the ring. Never mind starting training camp. If you figure they start training 2 months before that, that means 3 months after that he's back in the gym. I don't believe he was ever mentally or physically ready to enter that fight. He just looked like he did not want to be there. His body weight said 147 on the scale, but that was just sucked out of him just to make the way in. And that was it. Like there was it would be great to see the sparring partners who worked with him, what they would have had to say of how he looked in camp, because they would have said this was not the same guy that got ready for Duran in Montreal. That's what I believe. Stomach issues or not, whatever it is, he was going to get beat. There was no way he was touching Ray on that night. So that's my take on that. Scully?
Well, I think, as people have it like it was a whitewash, but until the 5th round or so, it wasn't a bad fight. Like he wasn't getting killed or anything. Fighters feel each other, right? And he felt like Ray all of a sudden started feeling good. I'll bet you Ray was smiling inside. Like around the 6th round, Ray was like, "Oh, I feel it, man. I feel
got
it.
him. I got him.
I'm Superman." And Roberto certainly felt that. And when Ray did the bolo punch and then hit him with the jab, embarrassed him. And I always remember this. When he quit, Ray stepped in. Ray didn't know what was going on, and Ray hit him with like a right hand. I think it was a right hand, left hook to the
To the
body.
body. Yeah.
And Duran didn't even flinch.
Yeah. Yeah.
He didn't even flinch.
Yeah.
It was nothing. I think as a man, because you could see the look on his face when Ray did these things to him. You could see that if he could have stabbed Ray in the eye with a pencil, he would have. And I think as soon as he did it, 2 seconds later, I think he regretted it. I think and 5 minutes later, I think he was sick to his stomach, for real. I think when he realized what he did, I think he just did it in, you're angry and you yell at somebody and then, I didn't mean it. I think he yelled at somebody and he didn't mean it.
Yeah. Boxing's like that, though. You can't have that lapse even for a second.
Right. And you can see like the switch shut off. Like Ray started clowning him and it was just him and Ray. The people weren't even there, and he's like, you know what? You want to play games? It would be like if they were sparring, and a guy's like, come on, man, I'm not doing this. I'm leaving. You want to play around, you want to goof around. I'm leaving. I'm not doing this.
That's the look
And
he
he
had
did
on
he
his.
did it in front of the world.
That's the look he had on his face when he said no. I don't think it was as much as disgust with Ray as with himself that I shouldn't be here. They told me I had to be here. I had a contract. I had to be here. I didn't want to be here.
Yeah.
It was almost like an fu to the people who said you got to take this fight right away. Because think about it.
Yeah.
Like that was a fast rematch. You know what I mean? That was fast. November,
Yeah.
June, end of June 20th was the
Yeah.
fight.
Not just that,
That
but
was-
Angelo says it in the book. That's 100%. Like they, it's not like, oh, he just stumbled into, like, no, that was 100% strategic. And
Yeah.
honestly, Ray Leonard was known for doing things like that. Before he
Sure.
would take the Hagler fight, yeah, he was retired. He goes, I'm retired. And then he heard one thing about, like, Duran had, this is what it was. Duran had fought Hagler. And he goes, he walks by him and he goes, you box him, you beat him. And all of a sudden he goes, really? Like, you think so? He's like, yeah. And then there was one other thing I can't remember, but the last thing was Ray opens a restaurant. He has Marvin come down to his restaurant. He goes, come to my restaurant. I'd love for you to eat here. It's a grand opening. It'd be great to have you. And he goes, so how's it going, Marvin? And Marvin goes, honestly, man, he goes, made enough money. He goes, it's kind of getting hard to get up for training. The fight was made a week after that. So Ray was very strategic, and Angelo says all of that in the book. He's very. It's not like these things are happening just sort of coincidentally. It's all very strategic in how he does it. The ring also, they in the fight against Duran, I believe the ring they had a bigger ring, which people have different thoughts on it. But obviously, who's it going to favor? Probably the guy who has to use lateral movement.
100%.
And there was one
the
other.
difference
Too.
between an 18-foot and a 20-foot ring is massive.
Yeah.
It's massive.
Yeah.
So Ray
Massive.
knew what he was doing. He was very strategic. The other thing that I had read, and it was the last thing from this book that it still sticks out to me. Angelo, he ended up getting a pretty sweet deal when he started training / managing Leonard, and he says it in the book. So it's 15% to train and manage. You do the math and you look at what his purses were as his career went on, and it gets to be pretty big. Unfortunately, Ray was sort of ahead of the curve in having a whole team. He had this attorney, something trainer. I forget his name. Mike Trainer. Long short, Mike Trainer sends a letter to Angelo and goes, hey, when you train, you only come for, 3 weeks. You're not there for the whole entire training camp. So we're actually pretty disappointed. We thought you'd be here for more. So you're going to have to re-sign a contract or we're going to just sort of push you out. And, it all came down to right before a fight, he comes in with the contract. He goes, you got to sign this right now. And, Ray Leonard's there and everything. And Angelo's kind of a sweet guy. He's not a real mean, confrontational guy. But there's all this pressure, and I think it's kind of embarrassing when that's happening right before a fight. So under duress, he signs the contract, and that's that. And it's for him to take significantly less money. Here's where I think I know where your answers are going to come, but I'll play the devil's advocate because I kind of thought about this. As a trainer, I feel like you should be there for the whole camp. I feel like you owe it to your fighter to be there.
You are the camp.
Yeah. So to me, I actually, even though Trainer is sort of the bad guy, and I think the same as you, Russ, that Angelo Dundee is the greatest to do it. I think he's an incredible person. But I do think he should have been there for the whole camp, and that was a valid point. That's my thoughts on it. What do you guys think?
Well, let me tell you this much. I have a friend of mine who trained with Angelo Dundee, and so I was like, "Oh man, what's it like?" And this was years ago. This is in the '80s, and I said, "Oh man, what's it like? What's it like being with Dundee?" And he goes, I don't see him till like 2 days before the fight." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "He doesn't come in till a few days before the fight." I go, "Well, and I'm like, I was a kid then. I'm like, "Well, what do you mean? He's your trainer." He goes, he comes in. It's more like he wants to be in the corner and let everybody see. But my main trainer from when I was a kid, he works with me till Angie gets there, and then Angelo takes over. And a couple guys have said that. Apparently he got older and he didn't want to be in camp, I guess. So some guys, if you let somebody get away with something, then they're going to get away with it, and they become accustomed to it, and all of a sudden it becomes the way things are done. Like, oh, Angelo doesn't come in until a week before the fight, and everybody's, oh, okay, no problem. Which is crazy. Yeah, but that's what the kid told me. He goes, I don't even see Angelo till a couple days before the fight.
I had no idea, Jesse, that you were going to bring this story up about Angelo, did I? Like we hadn't spoken about this or anything,
No,
right?
absolutely not. No.
So earlier, when I said I consider him to be the greatest, and I specified in saying, not trainer, but greatest corner man in boxing history. And that was something that Vinny Curto, who's the guy who gave me my start really in the game and who made me believe that I could do this, he worked with Angelo from the time he was like 17 years old, and he told me about Angelo. Like in the corner, the things he tells you, how he handles the corner, says no one's even close, right? Angelo just knew everything to do. He knew what to say at the right time, how to say it, how to deliver it, the intonation, everything was just right about everything he said. But in the ring, toweled you off, training. He thought he was being a trainer. He toweled you off, and that was it. There you go. That's it. Just do your thing, because he was so used to working with such phenomenal talent in his life.
Yeah.
He didn't have to do anything. And my inspiration for being a trainer came from my dear friend who I miss so much, God rest his soul, was John Davenport, who ran the Second Street Youth Center. And Vinny and I talked about this, and it carried out with John. And back in the day, Emmanuel, used to train guys at the amateur level and bring them up. And that to me was always the definition of a great trainer. And I wanted it to make a mission in my life that I was going to take a kid that I started from the cradle to a title. That was to me what a trainer was all about. That was somebody building a fighter, because when you get all this great talent that the Olympic gold medalist, and you get him and he's handed to you. You get handed the best piece of talent on the market at that moment. All you can do is screw it up, right? Like, I mean, the guy's so good, all you can do is mess it up,
Yeah.
So I wanted to be, and that's why, like, in my book, which will come out before Scully's book, even though he got a 20-year head start on my book, on his book, I
I'm
say
taking
that,
my time.
yeah, and John will relate to this. Despite all the guys that I've worked with, Otis becoming world champion, Lemieux winning a world title, working with all these guys, my greatest achievement as far as a trainer is concerned is a fighter that I had named Ron Donaldson. Ron Donaldson is my greatest achievement as a trainer, because this guy overachieved by 200% what he should have been for the talent that he had. And that to me proved that I could coach, that I could take a kid and make them better. Up in Canada, we don't always we don't have a gym where we're infiltrated by a bunch of natural talent who just, they're all so good. You don't even look at the ones that are bad. We just have to take whoever happens to walk in the gym. You know what I mean? They were, okay, I want to be a boxer. Well, you got to work with them. You got to build something. And Ron Donaldson's my greatest achievement as a coach. So that's why I said what I said about Dundee, because, I'm like from the school of John Davenport, where you trained your fighters from the beginning. You brought them up, you took them through state titles and national championships in the amateurs, then turned them pro, moved them along the way, managed the way through, navigated the waters to get to a title shot. They're my heroes. Those are my heroes.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think that's critical. Whenever they talk about like trainer of the year and they go through these guys, I think they typically look at who had the most championships in X amount of time, but like they don't consider what did they do with that guy to get him there. And I've said that before. If you have 3 champions who are kids who walked into your gym, especially if you're located in the middle of like the Midwest, or not necessarily on a coast where you're going to have more access, I think that's better than if you have 3 champions they came to you. They were developed. They might have already won championships prior. Like there's got to be some consideration for like what the trainer did with the fighter to get them there, or how much they participated.
I think you'll find that there's a correlation. There's always a correlation between who the best fighter in the world is and who happens to win Trainer of the Year award. And I'm not sure that that's always fair. I want to see the trainer who took a scrub and made him great. You know, and made him a good fighter, or somebody who shouldn't have won. The guy who pulled off the upset, the underdog trainer who got a win when his fighter wasn't supposed to win. That's the guy you should be looking at. You know, that's the guy. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, like you just great fighters. Okay, besides that guy, who else have you got? You know, you got four others. No, but the lower level kind of trainer could have that. So yeah, I have a little weakness for trainers who develop their talent and build them up and make them and come through the ranks. And you know, Scully's been through the ranks. He's been with kids that he's taken through the amateurs up to the pros. Yeah, and when you start winning at that level, it's a different story. Knowing that you contributed to that throughout their growth when no one cared except you and the kid.
Right. And I even told you, we talked about it one time where I said, to me, also the mark of a good trainer, and nobody would even notice this, but say you take a kid and they go, hey, we got this kid, he's 12-6, he's 12-5, he's a pretty good fighter, but he's 12-6. And we need you to work with him. We need somebody to work with him. And then all of a sudden, a year later, he's like, wow, everybody's like, man, that kid, he got a lot better in a year. Like, this kid's, this is amazing, right? Now, nobody in the grand scheme of things, people in England aren't going to care that some kid in Texas is really good now, a year later. But not everybody could do that. Not everybody could do that. At even some of the so-called best trainers couldn't do that. They couldn't make a guy better. So I look at that. I think that's special. No, they won't get credit for it. Nobody will even notice it, but guys like me and Russ. But I would notice that for sure. I'd see, and I've seen it like in my area where there's a guy and he started working with this kid, and and I've told people like, man, it's crazy. Like that kid, in my head I'm saying he's never going to be world champion. He's never going to be world champion, but he's a lot better now that he's training with you. That's for sure.
Yeah, yeah, that's key for
Absolutely.
me as well.
Here's something I was thinking about the other day because obviously boxing, they make movies about fighters. Sometimes it's because it's such a big name, like they made an Ali movie, they made a Duran movie, and they're pretty good. There are other movies about fighters who aren't as popular, but they turn out to be just like, to me, some of the best movies. Like I would say, we all probably think Raging Bull is in like the top two boxing movies, I would say. And LaMotta obviously was very popular, but by the time the book came out, I don't know if the common person on the street would know Jake LaMotta. And then Mickey Ward, I thought The Fighter was just such a real gritty boxing movie. I loved that movie. But as you look through it, there are a lot of Hollywood type stories in boxing. So the question I'm getting to here as I kind of sift through that is, what do you guys think is the best boxing movie that has never been made?
It's never been made.
Yeah, like there's a fighter with a story, no movie about it, but it would play out well in Hollywood.
Well, for
Hmm.
me, while Scully is pondering, because I see him pondering, so something came to my head quickly. His light bulb was waiting to go on. I'm waiting. Uh, there was a movie made, but it was poorly made. But I would say if you had to make the movie that defined the times, the movie that maybe the moment where the heavyweight championship of the world was more important than it had ever been prior, and everything that surrounded that should have been Joe Louis. Now they made like a really B movie type, they didn't put a lot of production quality into it. Coley Wallace did a good job as the trainer, but the overall production and everything wasn't really great, and it really didn't focus. I mean, on what happened, especially with that. What's the movie that book that was written? I have it upstairs on World on a Brink. World on the Brink. It was the story of the two. It's this big. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's the story about the two Schmeling fights. Which everything that encompassed the world in that day, whether it was the segregation in America, who Joe Louis was, how he became a hero of black and whites, especially blacks. I think that could have been done much better and told a much better story because that played, if you had to look at important fights in history that transcended sport, I mean, Jack Johnson against Jim Jeffries would probably be one that should be made, but it wouldn't be necessarily about the fighters or the fight, but about the era and what happened and how incredibly ridiculous things were at that time. And then you'd have the Lewis Schmeling fight, and then everything that surrounded Ali Fraser one, and not so much about the fight. I mean, obviously, great fight, no doubt about it, but everything that surrounded that transcended sport. It was bigger than the sport itself. So, yeah, that would
Yeah.
be my answer.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, on that note, literally, I was on Facebook yesterday, and they're talking about Mayweather and Pacquiao are fighting again, which is insane. I go, the first fight wasn't even good. What are you talking
It
about?
was 5
The
years
first
late.
fight,
Yeah.
right? It was, but here's the thing: people said I think Pacquiao said recently that and he's got to hype it up, but he said it was the biggest fight in history. I go, I love Manny Pacquiao, but come on, man. Like, that fight was nothing. It was not, it had no impact on the world at all. Zero. It had meant nothing. Nobody talks about it. Nobody will ever go, hey, let's put that Mayweather Pacquiao fight in. Let's watch that. They're going to watch Ali Frazier. They're going to watch, Foreman and Lyle, whatever. They're never going to say, let's watch that Mayweather Pacquiao fight again. And so, it's just, that's where we're at. That's where we're at. They want you to buy this fight, and he's using the first fight as as like, remember the first fight? And I'm going, yeah, I do remember the first fight. That's why I don't want to see the second one, So that's where we're at with the world.
I want to take a step back real quick, Russ, because you had said you were talking about that fight, and this is how I understood it. After really reading about that, I didn't realize. Maybe I have it wrong, but the way I understood it is that fight, not the first one, but the second fight between Schmeling and Joe Louis. In their second fight, that was something that was almost like a unifying force in America, because he was the American fighting, and it was during the war, so it was him fighting against the Nazi representative, which is, I don't think is actually totally fair to Schmeling, but that is what he was.
That
was who he represented. Yeah, and so that being said, that was that was a unifying moment. One of the first times where everybody in America was rooting for a black guy to succeed. And it unified races in a way that they were so segregated that it was like a huge step for America. Am I overestimating what that actually was, or is that about what it was?
That's why I say it's so important to have done this, because if people think they're fighting today under pressure, you have no idea. You have no idea. Like, they tried everything to. I mean, and they couldn't have Schmeling hold on to that title. Lewis shouldn't have even been champ. But I mean, that just goes to show you how dirty and rotten the politics of boxing, were even back then. Schmeling beat Lewis. He was supposed to fight Braddock for the title, and they didn't want to give him a shot. They wouldn't give him a shot, and he should have been champion. So, going in there against the only man to knock him out, they hedged their bets on Lewis, and he carried an enormous amount of weight on his shoulders, for black people, for Americans, for the world, like even people outside of America. This was the allies against the Germans, even though Schmeling was an unwilling pawn in the deal. But, certainly if he'd have won, I'll tell you what, Hitler would not have, waited 1 second to use the propaganda of that win like they did in the first fight. So you think you're under pressure now, man. Jim Jeffries was under pressure. Like Jim Jeffries fighting Jack Johnson, he was under pressure, bro. That was pressure.
And you know what? I can tell you, how big Lewis was back then. Boxing was a bigger sport, I think, back then.
Of course it was.
And here's what my father told me. He said when Joe Louis was fighting, back then they didn't have the TV. They listened on the radio. And he said you could walk through Hartford, Connecticut. He said you walk down the street and everybody would be on their porch listening to the radio, right? In the summer. He goes, you wouldn't miss a punch, because by the time you passed one house, you were hearing the other house with their radio. So he goes, everybody had the radio on. It was, you wouldn't miss one punch walking down the street.
It's so cool too. I think
Yeah,
that's the coolest thing ever. Hearing stories like
yeah,
that.
for
Like things that
sure,
Listen,
for
the
sure.
being the heavyweight champion of the world was that was like you were king. You were king when you were the heavyweight champion of the world. It meant something. You carried that with an honor.
Can I tell you something real quick though?
Go.
Did you ever read Willie Pep's book, Friday's Heroes?
I have it. I can't. mean, if I read it, it's a long time ago. Yeah, I wouldn't
Well,
remember it.
listen, as the featherweight champ, because everybody, they're all the big name champions, everybody knew them, right? And he said that Rocky Marciano, Rocky was coming up at that time, and they were in New York City, and they saw Willie Pep walking, and Rocky Marciano told his manager, "Let's follow him. Let's see what a world champion like him does." And he goes,
Jeez.
they followed him to a strip club. and they and they waited like a half hour for him, whatever, to come out, and he left with some girl, and they were like, "This is it." And blew his mind.
That's
Yeah.
good. That's good. So yeah, I mean, being heavyweight champion of the world, I mean, that's the ultimate. Like especially for a single sporting event. I mean, you couldn't go anywhere on the planet. Like Ali, of course, he transcended the sport. But imagine there is no place on the entire planet that Muhammad Ali could go and not be recognized.
Yeah.
Right.
Nowhere.
Right. Like he couldn't walk into CVS to get a Snicker bar, right?
Yeah.
He just couldn't do it. But Charles Martin could. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of guys who could. No offense to Charles Martin, but there's a lot of guys who could go into CVS and not even draw a blink.
Well, I'll tell you a story. When before Deontay Wilder became heavyweight champ, we went to California to spar Audley Harrison. And so we'd door spar, and then we'd go out to get something to eat, go grocery shopping, and people thought it was LeBron James.
Oh,
I
Jesus.
mean, he's a big guy, right? But they thought he was LeBron, right? They thought he was LeBron. They had no idea, that. I mean, okay, he wasn't champ yet or anything, but I mean, you'd recognize. I mean, if Tyson Fury would walk in, you might think he's from wrestling or whatever, but you're going to notice him in an airport. You guy was
Yeah.
6'6", 300 pounds. You're going to notice him. Lewis
He's
wasn't.
got a presence too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He dresses in the crazy. Like
Right.
he couldn't
Right.
go anywhere without being noticed just
Well,
because of
Joe Lewis could
Yeah.
wear just a regular suit, and he was going to get recognized because he was Joe Lewis. And this was
Yeah.
before
That's
TV.
funny.
This was before seeing his face everywhere. He was, you'd get a picture of him, a grainy picture in a newspaper, and people recognized and knew who the Brown Bomber was. That's the
Yeah.
difference.
But I heard from everyone I know that knew Muhammad, hanging out with him was a giant pain. Because not only was he like wildly recognizable and crowds would form, but he loved it. So he would stop and sign every autograph and talk to the people and do magic tricks for the kids. And if you were with him and you just wanted to go to dinner, you'd be like, well, there goes the reservation because we're going to be here for hours. Like he loved it. He couldn't help
Yeah.
himself.
Yeah.
His wife said they'd be in the airport and they would miss their flights all the time because he wouldn't refuse an autograph. And
Wow.
finally she said to him one time, like, why would you miss a flight for this? And he said, you got to understand, for most of these people, it's their only chance to ever meet me and to get a picture, and I don't want to disappoint them. And so he said, I know I'm going to get another flight. I know I'm going to get on the next flight. I'm good. And
So that's why
that's
when
what he
Scully travels, he drives.
Yeah.
did.
Never has
That's
that
right.
problem. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
How about, look at, I always like telling the story about Ali, heavyweight champ and all this stuff. I read a story about a guy. They said when Ali, later in his life, when he lived in Berrien Springs, Michigan, right, on the farm there, they said, this guy tells the story. It's in one of Ali's books, and he goes, he goes, I love Muhammad Ali, and somebody told me where he lived. So I drove over and I said, man, maybe I can meet this guy, this would be crazy. So I go over, nobody's there. So I knock on the door. I knock on the front door. I think his wife or somebody answered, and they let him in, and they told him, oh, Ali's in the living room. He goes, I go in the living room. He's in there watching a John Wayne movie. He tells me to sit down, and I end up eating a bowl of ice cream with Ali watching a John Wayne movie in his living room. He goes, I couldn't believe it. He goes, and many people have told similar stories. They go, yeah, the freaking guy, it was insane what how accessible he allowed himself to be.
Yeah. And with no fear either, like not scared that someone was going to do anything to him. Now fighters have entourage around them because they're scared someone's going to attack them for the stupidity that they say, in public, and they're scared that someone's going to come after them for saying something like that. Ali didn't worry about that at all, ever. Like he never imagined that somebody would want to hurt him or do something bad.
Well, what's funny? Everybody loved him, right? And they said even people that thought they hated him, when they met him, they couldn't help but love him.
Yeah.
They were like, and this guy told a story, and he goes, I grew up in the South. He goes, in my house, Rocky Marciano was the king and blah, blah, blah. And I thought Ali should have went to war. And he goes, I meet him because my son wanted to go to Deer Lake to the gym. And so my son was young, so I brought him. And he goes, man, I meet Ali and he's doing magic tricks for my son. And he goes, I couldn't help but love the guy. He goes, he just totally blew my mind. I wanted to dislike him and I couldn't. It's so funny.
The only negative thing that I've ever heard anybody say about Ali, and this I got, when he still had his faculties about him, was George Chavallo told me this. And he said Ali didn't treat Frazier right. He said the Frazier thing, the whole thing with Frazier, after Frazier tried to help him, Frazier supported him in the draft. Frazier even came out, and it's in my book, where he said, if Baptists were not allowed to fight, I wouldn't go either. That's what he said about the war, And so he respected Ali's conscientious objector position of not wanting to go to Vietnam and everything. And he said Ali treated him harder and was meaner to him than to any fighter he ever fought. And that sort of was sad, because both of them kind of like needed each other for the greatness that they both became. No doubt about it. They had the dance partner. But yeah, that's that.
You know what I always kind of thought about that. My people forget, and I forget. Like think about Ali when he was fighting Liston. He was only 22 years old. Like imagine if he was in our gym today. We'd be like, this kid, he's gonna be a man. Eventually he'll mature. And you figure Ali is under all this pressure. Like it's tremendous pressure. Like even forget not just being heavyweight champ, but half the country hates you. You're a Muslim.
More than half, maybe.
And I think he look. I don't think he wanted to dislike Joe, but I think all the people that hated Ali loved Joe. They were like, "Oh, Joe's gonna beat your butt. Joe's gonna kill you." So I think Ali, in his young mind at that time and under the pressure, he's like, "Okay, well, if Joe's the guy you love, then." I'm talking to you through Joe. I think there's a psychological aspect.
Well, okay, hold it. By time he fights Joe, which is in 71, he's like 29 years old at this point. He's not 22 anymore.
Right, but he still hadn't been the conviction hadn't been overturned yet. I think it was right around fight time that the conviction was overturned. So he was still out, and he was getting hate mail and all kinds of wild crazy stuff. I mean I get it. I get the idea, like, of and I think, and he regretted it. And I've seen video where he said listen, I really regret treating Joe like that. He goes I was wrong about that. And
That's
I'll say
fine.
this, yeah, but I say this too. A lot of people think Joe didn't like Ali, but I actually sat with Joe in his office in 2005, and it was really a good time. Like it was a spur of the moment thing. I just stopped in, and Marvis brought me up, and hung out with Joe. And always remember he had a picture of him and Ali that was recent. Like they were at a basketball game,
Yeah.
and he had a picture of him and Ali on his desk. I said, man, for him to have Ali on his desk, he must like him,
There's
Well,
video
and
of them talking afterwards too, where they're like buddy buddy, and it seems like they put it behind them. But yeah, from what I understand, like the heat between them, not so much Ali. I think Ali was just having fun being Ali, but I think the heat that Joe had towards him was 100% real. He was furious.
Joe was sick of Ali, making fun of him, and uh, and I think when they had the fight on stage with Cosell in '74,
Yeah,
you could see where when Joe stood up, Ali was trying to keep his cool, but I think Ali was like, "Yo, man, like
yeah,
I'm just kidding, what are you crazy?" And I think he tried to. I could see the look on his face and the vibe. He grabbed Joe trying to play it off, but he was really scared. Like
no,
he
no, yeah,
thought
he
Joe was
grabbed him before Joe threw first. He grabbed
yeah,
him
because he
one
before
hundred
thought Joe.
Joe
percent.
threw.
Well, he said at one point he said, "I thought he was going to try and break my jaw, and I had to get his arms before he did that." And I'll tell you one thing I do love about that day, though. A lot of people have never noticed this. Ali's brother stepped up. Like when Joe stepped up, Ali's brother came right out of the shadows, and he was ready to go at it with Joe,
Yeah.
which I
Oh,
respect him. But what I love is Joe turned to him and he said, "You in this too?" And,
Yeah.
Joe was like, "If I got to fight you both, I'll fight you
Yeah.
both."
Yeah.
That was so everybody was was ready to go.
I always felt like, and I know Ali apologized for it, but there's no doubt about it that, the calling him an Uncle Tom and the gorilla in Manila kind of thing,
yeah,
Joe's kids suffered from that. Ali could have made it, didn't have to make it that way, but Ali polarized the fans in that fight, that you took one side or the other, and Joe's kids suffered from that. I had Fraser when I was doing my TV show in the early 2000s. Around 2000, it might have been around that time, Scully, that you say. Joe
Yeah.
Fraser came up to Canada, and we had him on my show on In This Corner, and we would start talking, and Marvis was there, and everything's going good. He's talking. Then Ali thing comes along, and you ask one little question, and Joe was gone. And now Joe is starting to talk bad, and Marvis had to okay, Dad, okay, Pops, okay. He said, okay, Pops, and Marvis was giving us the signal, of don't get him going on that. You know what I mean? Because he still has. There was still a
yeah.
lot of
Wow.
Yeah.
pent up anger,
Yeah, yeah, I can see
if you
that.
will. And I
Did you did you did you ever hear the story though? Ali ran when Marvis was young. Ali ran into him. I don't know if it was in Manila or he ran into Marvis somewhere, and he told Marvis, "Listen, your dad's a great man. Like your dad is this, your dad is that." He really hyped him up to Marvis. Which I
well,
like.
I think it was after the Manila fight. It might have even
Maybe it
been,
was in Manila.
yeah, in the dressing room. And when Marvis
Maybe in the
went
dressing
back,
room.
Joe said, "Tell him to come here and tell that to my face. Tell him to come tell me."
Okay, okay,
Joe.
yeah,
So
Wow.
that,
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
that's how I
I
remember
But
it,
I
think
but I
think
I.
may be wrong.
Ali knew it was safer to tell Marvis.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think.
Because Joe, you
yeah.
could see Joe. If you ever see, there's a story. George Foreman tells a story. He said when they were doing Champions Forever, uh, they were doing a rap party or something, and I think Joe had a couple beers or something, and Joe started like trying to make his way over to Muhammad, right? And they said Muhammad didn't even know what was going on. He was oblivious to it. And Joe and Ken Norton, George Foreman and Norton took turns stepping in front of Joe and telling Joe, and George told Joe,
Gosh.
listen, chill. Like he told him like basically I'm not letting you do this,
Really? Really?
because Joe was trying to get to Muhammad. I think Joe said something like, I'm sick of this dude. I'm sick of this guy.
Yeah.
And they said Muhammad was oblivious to it. He never, to this day, probably never even knew it happened. But George told Joe, listen, man, it's not happening. Like, I'm going to step in. I'm going to stop you.
Yeah,
Wow,
for
that's
that,
crazy.
that's the one. I don't think there are many, but that certainly is one black mark on Ali's otherwise brilliant report card. That
Yeah.
was the one where he just might have overstepped the line a little bit too much. The washerwoman for Chavallo was funny. The bear was funny. Like there was always a certain amount of humor. And I mean, even one of my favorite things. I don't know if you guys have ever seen it. The medicals or the press conference. I don't know if it was press conference. The medicals or the physicals at the weigh-in with Ali and Oscar Bonavena. Have you ever watched that on
Yeah.
No.
Chicken,
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 Clay. He keeps saying
the
Clay.
chicken.
Yeah, right. They're
Yeah.
sat next to each other, and
Yeah.
he started talking. You talking like this, and Ali said, "Don't make me think that about you." He started talking like in a girly voice, right?
He was like he was 100 years ahead of his time. If
But
a
I mean,
fighter
nothing.
had
There was
that
no
kind,
threat. The old doctor that sat in between them wasn't worried that a scrap was going to break out. One was
Right.
calling
He
him
yeah,
was
a
laughing.
fairy.
Right.
The other
no, the
was
old
calling
story,
him a chicken. And he wasn't worried about it.
the
But
old
Yeah.
story was that like he would every time you'd see him and he'd have to be held back. Ange says this in his book, Angelo. He goes like, yeah, he goes, we'd hold him back with like all the power of my pinky finger because it was all shenanigans. None of it was
yeah,
real.
yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah.
he
Yeah.
was just a showman. He just knew how to, like just get it
I'll
exciting.
say this, and I've always thought this. I don't think Ali could fight at all outside the ring. I think Joe Frazier brutalizes him outside the ring. If they get into a fight, and I think Ali knew that. And that's why when he had as soon as he got the opportunity to neutralize Joe, he
Yeah.
did that. He didn't want to get into it with Joe.
Well, and look at their fights too. A lot of it was him clinching, which was strategic,
Yeah.
but it's not as if it was, like a clean back and forth. There was a ton of clinching. It's a ton of him
Yeah.
controlling him. Not the first. Now the first fight, I mean, my goodness, Joe hit him with the hook at will. That whole fight, it was crazy and so hard. You got to give Ali credit. What a chin to take
I've,
some of
I've
those
always
shots.
said, forget the 15th round, the 11th round. How he made it through the 11th round is a miracle.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, really outrageous stuff.
Well, I'm going to tell. I'll have to do a little homework for you, Jess. Maybe Scully, you've seen this. In the remaining two fights, 2 and 3, Frazier doesn't throw as many right hands in both those fights combined that he threw in the first fight. In the first fight, he was a two-handed fighter, and that's why the left hook kept landing, because he would throw that right hand, and
Yeah.
boom, become. The other times, other fights, he virtually was fighting one arm. He'd use the right hand to block, and then he's just throwing this. No right hands at all. And in the first round, he's digging the right hand to the body, coming up with the left hook to the head. Like he's really using both hands, and he never does that again. And I think that was, I don't know what happened to Frazier or why that happened, but it was almost as if he figured, well, I defend with one hand and punch with the other. It didn't work. But the first fight, he fought with two hands. And if you go and listen, I didn't even realize this until recently. I was listening to, someone sent me an AI enhanced video version of the fight where the color is spectacular and whatnot. And they do the introduction of the weight. Joe Frazier weighed, if I heard it correctly, weighed 205 pounds.
Yeah.
205. And Ali was
Yeah.
like 215 or something. He was 215.
Wow.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
haven't been 205 in a while. Jeez
Yeah,
Louise,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
a heavyweight, a
205.
clubbing heavyweight.
Yeah, 205. So
There's
Yeah.
a part of me that sort of feels like it'd be good for boxing if it's weird to say, but I feel like it'd be good for boxing to go back. I mean, you can't go back. Fighters can be whatever weight they want at heavyweight, but it was much more exciting when they were like under 220. Once they get over 220, I just, not to take away from anybody, but I just feel like they just aren't as polished, or maybe the fighters were just different back then.
you know who changed that? You know who changed that thinking for me? Because I used to think the same. We always used to assume anytime a guy was bigger than 220, 225, he was just going to be a lumbering oaf, who couldn't fight, right? He wasn't going to
Yeah.
be good. Lennox Lewis changed that. And Riddick came along, and now there were these big guys who could fight like they
Yeah.
were little guys. They could fight like they were small. And then incredibly or not, as much as I hate to give this guy credit, Tyson Fury, for his size and his body type, he is the most least athletic looking fighter maybe in the history of the heavyweight division, and prounces around like he's a lightweight. You know what I mean?
He's an anomaly. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
but he should be a lumbering oaf, but he's not. He's not. So
Yeah, for sure.
that's why it used to be where big guys almost fit the Foreman mold. Boom, boom,
Yeah.
but that went away. The Klitschko's did a little bit of it. They were just upright, looking to land one good shot. Land the right one good punch with the right hand, but. Lennox changed that, and the reason why is because Lennox learned to box before he was a heavyweight. He was a middleweight when he learned to box, so less than a middleweight, junior middle. So he learned to box at a small weight, and then grew up into doing that. So yeah, just thought I'd throw that in there.
That's a good point.
Very good point. Well, they started getting taller. I mean, I would say kind of started happening in the 80s, and then in the 90s, that's where you get like the Klitschko's, you got Lennox, you've got. Evander wasn't too tall, right? What is he, like 6'2", 6'1"?
Yeah, Evander was normal, muscular, but yeah.
Yeah, and he's a cruiserweight coming up too. But I feel like that's where you started seeing and then there were guys like Buster Douglas. There was who am I thinking? I mean, there were so many guys that seemed like they were like over 6'3", or they just looked like ridiculously tall compared to like the average heavyweight. But it started happening, and now it's sort of the norm. How many heavyweights do you see under 6 feet? So it's very, very uncommon.
No. Well, I don't think. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I was going to say you'd have to go back a long way before you had a heavyweight champion who was under 6 foot. I mean, what Tyson might, maybe Tyson might be one, but he certainly was the size of a heavyweight. There's no doubt about that. But yeah, there's not a lot of guys under 6 foot that became heavyweight champion of the world in the, since Rocky Marciano era.
Yeah. Now. We were sort of talking about Pacquiao versus Mayweather and how it's like it is crazy to try to sell this fight after we've already seen the fight 10 years ago. Like, how can you sell me on a fight that I've already seen and it was already it was kind of dull, right?
It was 5 years too late as well.
Yeah, so now it's 15 years too late,
Yeah.
But also, I think of the fights that are sort of getting the publicity. We all know what they are. One of them, is anybody Jake Paul fights. That's going to be like a huge crossover event. You also recently worked one of those fights for us. I remember texting you about it and having a joke about it. What are your thoughts after experiencing one of those shows? Does it give you a different perspective? Was it an exciting event? What were your thoughts?
It's nothing you've ever seen before. It's not a boxing event. It's a Hollywood production. It's not a boxing event. The only boxing people there are maybe the trainers and cornermen of the fighters who might be on the show. Nobody else knew who the hell I was, nor did they give a shit. Like nobody. It didn't matter. It was a Hollywood production of a different era, different children doing interviews, like 21-year-old girls asking Anthony Joshua questions. When they asked me to do that fight, the first thing I asked them was, yo, is this on the level? Like, are we, or is that my part of because if it's not, I don't want to be part of this, And I'm thinking, how could you make this fight happen? In less than a month, or just about a month, they turned from fighting potentially Gervonta Davis to fighting Anthony Joshua. They were able to garnish up enough money to entice Anthony Joshua for a reported $50 million. I don't know if it was pounds or dollars. Either way is still a lot of money.
Yeah.
Into fighting and getting it sanctioned by an athletic commission that you could fight Jake Paul. And
it's
in
insane.
A month, they turned that around.
I was shocked it was on the level. I was shocked. And I thought, man, this will ruin boxing forever if AJ's going to go in there and do a dog and pony show. Fortunately, he didn't, and it ended how it was supposed to. Although I will say, the one thing I will say is, and I've said this again and again, tons of respect for Jake Paul. I don't know if I would ever... Who else would jump up and wait to fight Anthony Joshua like that? Who else with just that much experience would do it? How many civilians or more like regular non-boxing people would be like, yeah, I'll fight, a guy who's recently removed from heavyweight champion of the world. I mean, and he didn't just take a shot and go down. He stuck around. So what I will say to his credit, some set of balls on Jake Paul. I'll give him credit for that. I have to. That was crazy that he did that.
Balls grow when your bank account grows too, huh?
I don't know. No, if my bank account grew, I don't think mine would get any bigger. I think I'd get softer. You know what I mean? Like,
No, you'd have to get in there. You'd have to get in there, and once you're in there,
yeah,
you yeah. I mean, but yeah, he was. There's no doubt about it. And I always contend that the reason he didn't get knocked unconscious, brutalized, and maybe taken out on an ambulance was because his jaw completely shattered and took the
yeah,
blow. Like it took the blow. That's what. Really, I'm serious.
Went through like, the jaw and missed like his brain.
That's right. Missed the transmission
that's so crazy.
to the brain. 100%. 100%.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do your thoughts on it change at all? That it's not. Do you think it's good for boxing at all? Do you see any potential good for boxing and Anthony Joshua or guys
Go
like
ahead, Scully. You can have this one. I'll take it after you.
I mean, what, Jake Paul?
Yeah, is it beneficial to boxing overall for Jake Paul to be doing
I mean, I think it's ran its course. Like, we don't need to let him just keep milking the people for the money, and like he did what he did. That should be the culmination. Like, you stepped up, you fought the champ, you got crushed, you got brutalized, bad. Like, okay, that was what was supposed to happen. But if we're gonna do this, and keep it going, like, I'm not a fan of it at all. And the only reason I saw it, I don't think I watched the fight. I just saw the clip of the ending. Because I'm not one for these type of fights. I'm not the one to blow it up at all. I never got wrapped up in it at all, and I wish it would stop. I wish they would stop doing these exhibitions and different things. I wish they would stop and get back to I wish boxing. I think boxing is regressing in a sense, and a big part of it is Floyd's fault. Everybody wants to maintain their own. They don't want to. They don't want to lose a fight. They don't want, like, back in the day. I think me and Russ were talking about this, and I was saying, Marlon Starling fought Donald Curry in a non-title fight, like just a fight. Marlon Starling fought Jose Barrett, Tommy Ayers, and all these guys, were killers, but they weren't even for world championships. Now, guys wouldn't fight those level of guys unless they fight for a world title. It's got to be a world title fight. So we're, every fight has to be for a title. So you got the whole world thinking everybody's a champion, and it's just insane. Even with Jake Paul, even the WBC was saying if he wins, they're going to rank him in the top 10.
That's though. I think that's a little bit of that,
Right, but it's just, because you're going to have other guys. You're going to have other YouTube guys. Even his brother's so stupid. He just jumps in. He tries to inject himself into everything, like to set up a fight for him and Anthony Joshua. And I'm like, man, if people are stupid enough to fall for him after his brother, like, they deserve to get fleeced of their money.
But you know what, Scully? It's not only him. Like, in the UK now, they're doing what they're calling now misfit boxing. I don't know if you've heard of that.
Is that like pseudo celebrities and celebrities?
Yeah, celebrities, singers. They're doing this stuff. But when you see the presentation that they put on, it's like this is on DAZN, and this is like they have commentators and they have the lighting, and you look like you're watching an Eddie Hearn matchroom event. Like they got security on stage, they do the face off, and people are texting about it and leaving comments on social media about it. And this shouldn't be allowed. Like, in my opinion, this should not. You should either have to be an amateur or a pro. You cannot just be in the middle and just anybody can put a show on in a non-sanctioned event and present it as if it's real boxing. That's what I think is the danger part in this, that they present this as if it's real boxing. And it's hurting our amateur program, because boxers are thinking, I don't have to go through all this. I can just turn pro. I don't have to go through and
Right,
fight the
right.
Russians and the Kazakhs and the Uzbekistans and the Cubans. What am I going to do that for? I can just turn pro.
I think there's one thing I noticed too, and it's not necessarily that, but it is a thing, is that whenever there's huge money that pops up in boxing, boxers all of a sudden will start to believe in and look for, and they're like trainers or mentors or whoever, they'll all start looking for that big payday. They believe that, like when I remember PBC when it started coming up, there were so many guys I had heard in Chicago. They're like, yeah, all we have to do is like we win a few fights, and then Al Heyman, like we're talking to a guy who knows Al Heyman. Nobody knows Al Heyman, I don't think, but long short, they're like, yeah, and then we get there, and you're going to be making 50,000 a fight in like a year or two. And I'm not going to name names, but I can think of 4 guys in particular. One of them's doing pretty well now. The other 3 are out of boxing and never achieved anything like that. They were stagnant. They didn't stay busy, and their careers sort of faded out. My concern is that whenever there's some huge looking opportunity, guys think that there's a shortcut, and there's not. Just like anything in life, there's no shortcut to get to the end.
Yeah.
There's so much that has to be done.
This misfit stuff at one point did fights between girl porn stars, and that drew all kinds of attention. Good looking girls. Now we're going to beat each other. This is what's hurting boxing because now we're diluting.
That reminds me. Did you see the other day? The girl Tretch, the rapper Tretch,
She
from
got
Naughty by
flattened.
Nature. His daughter got annihilated,
Oh my God.
and she fought a gold medalist.
Yeah.
Smart.
And she looked like she never boxed a day in her life.
She didn't.
It's crazy.
So that's the part that I don't like about it, and that's why, the sanctity of boxing has been invaded, and in the sense that we used to be a sport that had an honor, that the winner, the champion, was a somebody, and when you won a fight, when you were a pro, you were a legitimate, pro. That meant you meant something. It meant a little something. Now anybody can be anybody. And we're not getting these stories of guys that are coming out of the Olympic program. We're not getting that. It's been a while now. Think about it. Who's the last guys that have come out? Shakur, silver medal at the Olympics.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not a ton. It's not. There's not a ton of them. So, yeah.
That was the last one where there was a lot of talent across the board. The other thing that kind of bummed me out watching these last Olympics is there's a bunch of professional guys.
That's another thing. That's just as bad.
Yeah.
That's just as bad. It's not fun
worse
anymore.
Yeah.
I don't even like watching watching the Olympics and the Winter Olympics and seeing all the guys from the NHL playing in there. No, I don't want to see that. These teams have invested millions and millions of dollars into you to play for them, and now you go and play for free for a tracksuit and a pair of running shoes just to stay for your own ego boost. I went to the Olympics,
And the guy from Kazakhstan plays for the Rangers.
Yeah, exactly.
Crazy.
I don't like that either. I don't like it for boxing. I don't like it for the other sports. The Olympics was supposed to be for the best amateurs. That's what it was for. It was for the best.
Yeah. As a boxing fan, I loved the Olympics being like the creme de la creme coming out of the amateur program for the most part, and you'd have, like, I remember Shakur, and everyone's like, hey, this guy's going to be our first gold medalist in, X amount of years, and he's so young, he's coming out of New Jersey, and you'd get excited to see, like, how good are these guys, or if it's not them, let's see the guys who win gold and see who they are, so I can get a taste of, like, it's like watching college football and getting excited for the NFL draft. Now it's like, it's nothing like that. It's like if the college football players played against NFL players and you never really got an idea of how good they were.
I'll tell you what. Back in the day, and I'm in the boxing game, right? I'm in it, right? I'm here. Back when I was 15, 16, so I was 17, 16 and 17 when the 84 Olympics happened. I knew, not only did I know every Olympian, but I knew every guy that he beat to be on the Olympic team.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I knew everybody. I was on the elevator in Las Vegas. I did an event in Las Vegas this past June, right? I'm on the elevator. They had the Nationals going on at that time. And the kid one of the boxers is on the elevator with me. So I'm, hey, what's up, man? You know, where you from? And he tells me, and I go, oh, you're fighting. And he said, yeah. I said, oh, okay, cool. You know, good luck. So I figure he's in the tournament, right? Seemed like a nice kid or whatever. The next day, I do my reunion at in Vegas on the Strip, and I had Rocket Robin Blake was there, and Danny Little Red Lopez was there. Like these guys showed up, Montel Griffin and everything. So I did a thing because I noticed there was a bunch of guys, Rocky Juarez, and there was Olympians, Robert Shannon. So I say, Michael Nunn. So I said, look, let's have all the Olympians come up on the stage. You know, I want you guys to take a bow. Everybody that's an Olympian. And the kid that I was on the elevator with the day before, he gets up there and I go, hey, I asked my guy, I go, who's that? They go, oh, I think his name's Omari Jones.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
That's right.
he's like a bronze medalist. I go, man, I thought he was just some kid in the tournament. I didn't even know who he was.
Oh,
And he
jeez.
never told me who he was. I didn't even know the Olympics had happened.
Oh, Lord. Oh,
That's
Lord.
the difference. I remember watching Mark Breland fight Wayne Gordon from Canada.
Yeah.
It was a
Yeah.
big deal. Like that was his first fight of the tournament.
Yeah.
And now I got the bronze medalist. I'm talking to him. I didn't even know who he was.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'll
Crazy.
tell you what, guys. I know it's late for me. It's got to be late for you guys. So I'll wrap it up. I'll give you each the last word. Anything you want to say, what you got coming up next, whatever it is, it's all yours. Iceman, I'll give it to you next, and then Russ.
Well, I just had Stephen Butler, who I trained. He just fought a few weeks ago up in Montreal. Knockout of the year so far, maybe. I mean, it's certainly in the running. A vicious, brutal knockout. 168 pounds looks like a great weight for him. I think there's a good chance we'll get a championship fight. But he was talking. I saw him do an interview, and he mentioned it to me. He wants to fight Berlanga. I think he doesn't like Berlanga or whatever. And, and that would be They have similar mentalities. Berlanga's a little more outspoken, but Steven's every bit of a gangster as Berlanga is. Believe me. And that would be a good fight for boxing. But I'd prefer a title fight. But whatever happens, happens. But so that's kind of my focus now with Stephen Butler, trying to get his career, staying on track and making the most of this opportunity.
Scully, I'll tell you what, a Berlanga fight might even be worth more than a championship fight.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And especially when the first press conference happens, because Steven's no shrinking violet. You push his buttons, like they may have to literally fight right there at the.
Yeah.
Like Steven's one of those guys, like he'll have no problem throwing a punch.
Well, listen, I got to say something nice then about Steven. You heard me in the dressing room. I went in to see him, and we were trying to think, when was the last time we saw a kid who just turned 30 years old, 30 years of age, and he's had 44 professional fights. He's had 44 pro fights. He's been to a world title. He's fought for a world title, maybe twice, once or twice. Twice for a world title.
Twice.
Lost, comes back, keeps fighting again. A real throwback type fighter. I asked this question in French media when I did my piece. I said, name me a guy how far back do you have to go to find somebody who didn't win a world title, did not become champion, who had that many fights. I'm still waiting for an answer. We have to go way back to the days of, Fernand Marcotte, Gaetan Hart days to find guys. And to do it before 30, I don't know of anybody. If at this rate, he could potentially, finish with 60 pro fights, if not more. If he's not hurt physically, he could do that. And that's going to be unheard of, for a local fighter.
That's
so
awesome.
That's, hats off to him. And Jesse, thank you for having us, man. It's always good to just, we didn't even plan anything. We just talked boxing. So that's the best.
This was the best. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you both so much. Have a great night. And it's great to finally get you guys back. Thank you so much.
Let's do it again.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Beep, beep.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Yes. All right.